Namaste. Today we have Tina Marian with us, and she will be sharing her experiences and thoughts about Gita and Vedas. She has a degree, master's degree from Cambridge University in Gita and Vedas. Namaste.
Namaste.
So, how's your experience? Please tell us about your childhood and your upbringing, your education.
Well, I grew up in a secular home, Jewish home, where my parents were very involved in the art world. And so I spent a lot of time in museums and galleries. They were art collectors. But I had a strong spiritual interest from early childhood. And when I went to college in the US, as soon as I got to college, somebody handed me the book of my guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. Okay. The book was called Autobiography of a Yogi. And as soon as I saw the cover, I recognized him as my guru. And I began practicing meditation and studying the Gita, Upanishads, and all the rest.
What do you think
Hinduism is a way of understanding life, understanding the universe. It offers us a whole world view of why we're here, and also practices of how we can understand better our purpose in life and our journey, where we're heading.
I would also like to ask you your views about Judaism.
Judaism?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in a secular home, so I wasn't really exposed to a lot of religious practices. And many people of my generation who come from a Jewish background, because there was not a lot of religious practice, got drawn to Hinduism. Mm. The other thing that drew me to Hinduism was the understanding of the Divine Mother. In the Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the divinity is masculine. And that never resonated with me. From an early age, I felt worship of the Divine Mother. And when I started reading my guru's book, he was a complete devotee of the Divine Mother. He spoke about Divine Mother in her various forms and names. And that just rang so true to me. It was like, aha, yes, this is where I belong.
Okay. So you know that you don't have to change your religion if you want to practice Hindu culture.
That's right.
Or Hindu. But still you change your religion. So any specific reason behind that?
Well, culturally, I'm part of the Jewish culture, but spiritually, I'm definitely Hindu. After I read my guru's book, I read Valmiki's Ramayana, and I recognized myself from way back in my past as being a devotee of Ram and Sita. And so Ram has always been the form of deity, Narayan and Narayani, that especially I felt very close to. But it wasn't until much later that it became a personal relationship, and I felt their presence in my life.
So what do you find unique about it, and how it is different from other religions like Muslims or Christianity?
Well, there's not that personal relationship. Okay. So with Narayani, who's my deity that's been with me for so long. Sometimes she appears as Sita, and sometimes in other forms. Is a personal relationship. So if I have a problem in my life, I talk to her about it. I feel her presence in my life. I feel her guidance in my life. I see that she is providing me opportunities to reach where she is. So the divine comes into our level to inspire us, and then shows us the way to reach their level. And so that is the goal, to reach the level where the divinities, where they provide guidance to the universe.
Okay, so now this question is a little bit different. It's about, I would like to know more about Global Peace Initiative of Women. So tell me something about it.
So I was invited to organize a big summit of religious leaders at the United Nations in New York in 2000. And it was the first time the UN was inviting religious leaders. But they wanted the senior religious leaders, and so there were very few women, hardly any women. And they were mostly from the Abrahamic traditions. And so identifying myself as being a Hindu, also very close to the Buddhist world, I looked around and I said, well, this is unbalanced. This is not a representation of the world. So the women there asked to organize a follow-up summit of women spiritual leaders. And that became very difficult to organize. There was a lot of resistance. This was in 2002, but much more successful. And out of that, my organization was formed, the Global Peace Initiative of Women. And the goal was to balance out the interfaith world with men and women equally, have an equal voice, and the Dharma traditions also having an equal voice, so that East and West are equally representative.
So how it is going now?
So we began working in conflict areas, bringing women spiritual teachers, and then we moved on to environmental issues. And then many men wanted to join us, so now it's a balance of men and women. We still call ourselves the Global Peace Initiative of Women because the vision is held by a small group of women, but we're equal representation of men and women, and that's the goal, to create balance.
So I would like to know your views about Gita and Vedas.
Well, the Gita I studied since young. As a matter of fact, I can say I studied the Gita in my previous birth and in the birth before that. So the Gita is very familiar to me. And when I was in my 20s, it became something I kept with me all the time, read from it. Okay. My guru talked a lot about the Gita, and he encouraged us to really live with the Gita. Mm-hmm. I tried studying the Vedas when I was in graduate school, and it was completely unsatisfactory the way it was taught. It wasn't until years later when I came across Sri Aurobindo, who wrote a book called The Secret of the Vedas, that I really came to understand the Vedas, and that I came to understand that the deities are cosmic forces. So in our traditional stories, Indra is represented as a personality that gets angry, but in the Vedic vision, he's a cosmic force of the illumined mind. So when the rishis were praying to Indra, they were praying for illumination. They weren't praying for any of the lower things. They were praying for illumination, calling upon the higher mind to awaken. So I came to understand the depth of the Vedas, which are very hard to understand now without a proper teacher, because they were poets, and they spoke in metaphor. So unless you attune your consciousness to the consciousness of the rishis who lived in a higher age, it's very hard to understand the depth of their meaning. Yes. But Sri Aurobindo, I consider him to be my teacher of the Vedas.
Okay. So I remember I read Gita once in my life, and it was very hard to understand. So how you look at it? So how should people read Gita?
The Gita is a complete worldview, a lesson for life. Mm-hmm. How you engage, there's so many levels of it. How you engage with the challenges you face, how you live in the world but not of it, not getting overly attached to whatever comes to you in life. It's easy to be swayed here and there, but to keep a goal, a vision of your goal in life, mm-hmm. which is to serve without seeking the fruits of your actions. So we are to serve for the greater good, for our highest good, but not get fazed by the fruits. If it doesn't work out the way you want, okay. If it works out a different way, okay. It's all in the divine hands. And so the Gita lays all that out very beautifully, very succinctly. It takes the essence of the Vedas and speaks in more modern terms about what the essence of the Vedas teach us.
Yeah. So you claims that you lived one of the life with Sita Mata. So how was your experience then?
So at a certain point, I had been meditating for a long time when I began to have very real memories of my past births. Mm-hmm. The one just previous to this, and then previous to that, and previous to that. And I wrote about that in a book. But it went back not very far in time, a few hundred years. Mm-hmm. And when I took a trip to Ayodhya, I found myself, there's a process that happens to me where I feel pulled back into another time period. I felt pulled back into that time in Mithila. Okay. And I saw myself as a servant in the household. And then I said to myself, could this be real? Is this my life, or am I channeling the life of that servant? Okay. And then I thought, well, how can I know if it's my life or I'm channeling the life of a servant? But I lived, as I was writing, in that time period, I was living the life of that servant, and I was seeing Sita as that servant saw Sita, which is a different view from the traditional narrative.
So do you remember food culture or other things about that era?
Do I remember?
Food culture, what?
Food culture. Well, I do remember that food was looked at as medicine.
Okay.
And there was such variety of natural foods and natural medicines. So there are parts in the book where people are upset about one thing or another, and Sita knows just what to cook to calm the emotions, to calm the fears. It was a combination of the natural foods and the herbs that were available. And she was a master of the foods. And there's a story that when she is young, before her marriage, she goes off into the forest, and sometimes she began going alone into the forest, and she goes into a very high state of samadhi, where Janak Baba comes and he can't bring her back. The sages come and they can't bring her back. She's in a very, very high state. But eventually, and the sages are they're chanting, trying to bring her back into body consciousness. Eventually, she does return, and the first thing she does, she sees a plate of fruit in front of her, is to serve the sages. That is Sita, always serving food. And she loved to serve the food. When the sages came to visit Janak Baba and to visit her, because they regarded her as a sage, she loved to serve them food. It was a way of expressing love. So from Sita, I learned that food is a way of expressing love. We've lost that today, especially with processed food and packaged food. Where is the love in that food? So I think, and we become so unhealthy in our society. In order to regain our sense of balance and health, mental health, emotional health, and physical health, it's to see food again as a way of expressing love.
How was Sita Mata and how was the relation between Sita Mata and God Ram?
That's hard to put into words.
Okay.
The love between them. You know, everything that happened to Sita, in no instance was she the victim. She was the designer. She knew that she had to go into Lanka in order to help Ram do the work he needed to do. She had to work from the inside, he had to work from the outside. Okay. And she conveyed a lot of information to him about the situation within. Also, she was able to work on Ravana's mental states while she was there. And then when they returned and the war was over, there was an ancient curse issued by Rishi Bhrigu, who decreed their separation. And they both accepted it. But Brigu's wife, Sage Kyati, lessened it and weakened the curse and said it will be a partial separation. So Ram visited her very often, and there was no separation in actuality. I mean, even though she was in the forest raising her children, it was for the sake of Rishi Bhrigu, for the fulfillment of his curse. And the love between them, and this, I think, is one of the corrections that I hope to make in the mind of people. Ram was the epitome of Dharma. There's no way he would send his wife away, pregnant or not. There's no way. It wouldn't happen.
So you were with her throughout her life, or just...
No, this servant, Meenakshi, dies while Sita is in exile, is in Lanka. Okay. Or even in the forest before she goes to Lanka. During that period of time, she dies. But Sita's attendant, the one who was closest to her, remains. You know, Sita took several servants from Mithila with her to Ayodhya. Her personal attendant, Soma, lives to see her return and actually goes to the forest with her. This servant, Meenakshi, is reborn in Ayodhya, as many of the people around Sita were reborn in Ayodhya, because there was an important purpose to that, the bringing together the wisdom of Mithila with the power of Ayodhya. And so many of the citizens of Mithila were born in Ayodhya. The servant was reborn not as a servant, but as somebody whose father worked in the administration. And she is reborn with confusion. What happened to Sita? Everybody says she was captured and sent to Lanka. She can't believe that. So she goes in search of the attendant, who's an old woman now, Soma, and she finds her. And Soma narrates to her the rest of the story, what happened to Sita during the time of exile in Lanka and the return. So it's through Soma that the servant, now reborn as Anasuya, hears the story.
Oh, good. So what meditation techniques you used to recollect those births?
My guru's meditation practice is called Kriya Yoga.
Okay.
Kriya Yoga, and it works with the subtle energies in the spine, magnetizing the spine, bringing the energy into the higher chakras. And I've been practicing that for 50 years, and it's a very powerful technique, and it awakens memories. I attribute everything to my meditation practice,
Okay.
and the grace of the Guru, and Sita Ma's grace.
Sure. So, what message you would like to give to us, readers and viewers?
The key message that I received from Sita is love. Love for the earth, love for the rivers, love for the soil, love for the animals, love for the plants, love for people. And the love that she and Ram brought down to earth, the celestial love is at a higher, much higher level. We can only imagine what that celestial love is. But they incarnated on earth to manifest that love in human form. And that's the message for us. Dharma is based on love. The more we fill ourselves with love, the more we live a life of Dharma.
Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. If you like the video, please hit the like button and share the video and subscribe. Thank you.